Hi, welcome back to our class. And this is week 17, and we don't have any lectures for this week. And in this week, the main tasks that you'll be doing are to prepare for the final exam. And also there are 2 writing assignments due this week, at the end of this week. So first, in this video, let's talk about the final exam. So the final exam will be next week, starting the first minutes of Monday, next Monday. So yeah, so next Monday is December 13th of this year. The exam will start at 12 a.m. It means that you can start to take the exam starting from 12 a.m. on December 13th. And this exam will be due at the last minute of December 17th of 2021. So it's not the whole week. It's not the entire week. It's from December 13th to December 17th. And during this period, during this several day period, you can take the final exam at any time during this exam. And once you start this exam, you have 17 minutes to finish this exam. So yeah, you have 70 minutes, 70, yeah, sorry. You have 70 minutes to finish this exam. So it'll be longer than the other 2 midterm exams. And in this final exam, here are 60 questions and 4 extra credit questions. So in total, there will be 64 questions in this exam. And this final exam is comprehensive. It means that it will cover everything in this exam. So not only the rest of the chapters after the second midterm. So in this exam, in this course, we have covered chapter 1 through chapter 16. So we cover almost all the chapters. So this final exam is comprehensive. It is not only another midterm. And in this exam, out of the 60 questions, there 52 of the questions are the multiple choice questions. So most of the questions in the exam are multiple choice questions. You just choose the correct answer out of the 4 options. And 7 of them are filling in the blanks questions. That means that you need to write down the correct answer. Make sure that you have the correct spelling. You need to spell the words correctly to give the right answer. So 7 of them are filling in the blanks questions, and 1 of them is the matching question. So the format of the question is like this. And all the 4 extra credit questions are multiple choice questions. So extra credit questions are a little bit harder than regular questions. And this final exam accounts for the 30% of the total score. So the score of the exam is 60, and it counts for 30% of the total score. Total score is 200. So 60 out of 200 is 30%. So it's not really a lot. You know, it's called a final exam, but it accounts only for 30% of the total points. So each question, including actual credit questions, accounts for 0.5% of the total score. So because there are 60 questions, and they are like 30% in total. So each of the questions is 0.5%, half percent of the total score. And this exam is a closed book exam. That means that you cannot read any notebook, notes or textbooks or anything online. So it's totally closed book. You cannot watch, you cannot read other things or see other things during taking this exam. Yeah, so lecture slides, textbook notes are not allowed during the exam. So here are the basic information about this final exam. So you can be prepared for this final exam this week. You have entire week to prepare for the final exam. So next, we can talk about the study guide. So as I said just now, this final exam is comprehensive. It covers everything. So we have talked about the study guide from chapter 1 to chapter 5 when we reviewed for the first midterm, and we have reviewed the study guide from chapter 6 to chapter 10 for the second midterm exam. So in this lecture video, we are not going to review the study guide for those chapters from chapter 1 to chapter 10. So in this video, we are going to review the study guide for chapter 11, 12, 11, 12, 14, 15, and 16. Right. So there we have not learned chapter 13 about organizational psychology yet. So today we're going to review about the important concepts that will be covered in the final exam from chapter 11, 12, 14, 15, and 16, the last 4 weeks of lectures. So if you want to review about the stuff from chapter 1 to chapter 10, you can go back to other modules to find the videos in which I reviewed the study guide for those chapters. So let's review for these chapters right now. So that here is a file on Canvas. It's called the study guide for the rest of the chapters. So it's the study guide for part of the final exam. So first chapter we can review for today is chapter 11 about personality. So I open the slides on the right side. Now you should see the slides on the right side on the screen. So for this chapter, we just know the following concepts. First, we need to know the concepts that describe the self-concepts from the Freud's psychodynamic perspective. Let's see. So the basic idea is that since we are born, since every person is born, there is it inside of everybody's mind. So it is includes the biological drives that are aggressive, and that it seeks pleasure all the time, and the it does not have any patience, and it just wants to have happiness, have pleasure. So this is it. Those are the biological drives and the original self. We can see that. And the superego forms later because we grow up. Every child will grow up through socialization. So they assimilate to the culture, to the society, and need to obey the social rules to behave correctly, to talk things correctly. So superego is gradually formed through learning, through socialization. So the children will internalize those social rules that so those social rules become a part of their self-concept. So superego forms. But however, there are oftentimes conflicts between the it and the superego because it wants the pleasure immediately, does not want to wait. But superego tells the person that sometimes we cannot behave that way. Sometimes you need to behave this way. Sometimes, so oftentimes there are conflicts between it and the superego. So gradually, ego forms in the self-concept to balance the needs between the it and the superego. So the ego provides the middle ground between it and the superego. So we can understand these three concepts. And another one is called inferiority complex. It's a concept that mentioned by or developed by Alfred Adler. So that's the tendency that people have a feeling that they do not have worth in their life and they don't measure up to the standards of others in the society. Means that they are inferior to other people. Other people are superior. Other people are good. There are other people are capable. Other people are excellent, nice, but they themselves are not. So that kind of feeling is called inferiority complex. So you just know this concept here. And another concept that we need to know about is self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is the concept that when we talk about how cognition influences personality. So the self-efficacy, in other words, is called self-confidence, but in psychology, we call it self-efficacy. So that is the confidence in our self-abilities, the evaluation of to what degree we can successfully master the challenging tasks. So in other words, to what degree, the evaluation of to what degree we ourselves can be successful, can succeed in doing something. That is self-efficacy. And there are 4 reasons for why we have self-efficacy. So, or we can say there's 4 sources of high self-efficacy. So the first one is very direct, very intuitive. Just the experiences of doing something really successful before. So it's called previous mastering experiences. Having the memory or having the experiences of successfully doing something before. Just that experiences help us to accumulate our own self-efficacy, to increase our self-efficacy. The second source of self-efficacy is called vicarious experiences. It means that that's not direct experiences, but that's the experience of observing some others doing something successfully. And those others people are similar to ourselves. So if others can do, I can do as well. So we can get this kind of conclusion from vicarious experiences. And the third source of self-efficacy is called social persuasion. It means that other people persuade this person to have self-efficacy. It is not from the direct or vicarious experiences, but also from other people's persuasion. And the last source of self-efficacy is the people's own emotional and physical states. So sometimes people are happy, they have positive emotions, and sometimes they are in good health, or they are very energetic, or they are not tired. They just wake up, they're not sleepy. So this kind of a really good physical states and positive emotions can make people to have higher self-efficacy. So of course, experiences make people to have high self-efficacy, but sometimes at certain moments when people are very energetic or their bodies function well and they are happy, they have positive emotions, their self-efficacy levels will be higher even. And another concepts we can know of is locus of control. It's another kind of a belief. It's a belief about the power we ourselves have over our lives. There are two kinds of locus of control. There is internal locus of control and external locus of control. So internal locus of control means that we have a belief that we can make things happen. We can decide the outcomes of something. We can make efforts and we can get outcomes that we want. This is a belief of internal locus of control. External locus of control means that we do not have the direct control of certain results, certain outcomes, because outcomes are results of other factors, such as the chances, such as other people. Other people control the outcomes, such as the situation. Because of situation, we cannot control the outcomes. So this is called the external locus of control. So locus means location. Internal locus of control means that the location of control is inside ourselves. External locus of control means the location of control is outside of ourselves. And another big thing that we need to know is the 5 traits in Big 5 personality theory. So remember that we talk about traits, personality traits. Those are the stable patterns that describe people's characteristics, stable characteristics. So there is a theory called the Big 5 personality traits theory. There are 5 main dimensions that describe personality traits. So the first one is extroversion. I will not talk about in detail about these 5 traits in here. You can go back to watch the lecture video to know about this if you forget. So extroversion, neuroticism, or emotional instability. The third one is agreeableness. Next one is conscientiousness. And last one is openness to experiences. So remember that conscientiousness is not consciousness. There are 2 words, right? Consciousness is something that is a state that we are aware of internal and external stimuli. It's the awareness of what is happening right now. So that is consciousness. And this is conscientiousness is a dimension, one of the dimensions in the Big 5 personality trait theory. So this is for chapter 11. So these important concepts are really important. Please make sure that you review them all. Next chapter is chapter 12, social psychology. So you might realize that there are a lot of points or concepts to know of, or a lot of stuff to remember. For sure, yes, it covers a lot of stuff in this week because social psychology is such a huge topic. And also in the final exam, there will be slightly more questions about social psychology compared to other chapters. So for personality, you can see the content in this chapter is not a lot. So there will be less questions about chapter 11 and other chapters. And there will be slightly more questions about social psychology. So it's definitely worth to review carefully for this chapter. So social psychology, know the following concepts. First, social psychology. studies how people influence each other. Study how situation is powerful to influence everybody. That is social psychology. So that next one is fundamental attribution error. So that is the cognitive mistakes that people may make when they try to explain the reasons for why people are doing something. And what this kind of a mistake is that people oftentimes overemphasize the internal factors of others' behaviors. In other words, when they try to explain why other people are doing something, they oftentimes pay too much attention to this kind of people, this kind of person, or this kind of people. They oftentimes believe that why people are doing something is because those people are like that, are those kind of people. So this is called a fundamental attribution error. When they attribute other people's behaviors, they often make this kind of error. This is a fundamental attribution error. And another bias or error that people make when they try to attribute other people's behavior is called actor-observer bias. So what is that? People tend to attribute others' behaviors to internal factors and also attribute their own behaviors to external factors. So actor-observer bias is based on fundamental attribution error. So actor-observer bias means that they have a different tendency to attribute people's behaviors between attribute other people's behaviors and attributing their own behaviors. This is actor-observer bias. Another concept that we need to know is social role. So social role is a pattern of behavior that is expected of a person in a given social group or in a given social settings. So that is social role. For example, students is a social role, teacher is a social role, policeman is a social role, and manager is also a social role. So those social roles give people of how to behave, a pattern of behaviors for different social roles. And another concept is attitude. What is attitude? Attitude is a evaluation of some people, of a person or idea or thing. That is a attitude. So attitude evaluation can include the feeling, a feeling toward something or some people. And attitude might include a belief or knowledge about a person or thing. And also attitude might include the resulting behavior toward that target, toward that person or thing. So attitude is not just the thinking or feeling. It includes feeling, thinking, and doing. Feeling, thinking, and doing. So attitude includes all the three aspects. Another concept is cognitive dissonance. So through this experiment done by Leo Festinger, they found that sometimes people will have the psychological discomfort. They do not feel comfortable inside of their mind when they have two or more inconsistent attitudes, behaviors, or ideas, or opinions, or thoughts. So when in people's mind there are two thoughts, behaviors, or attitudes that are not consistent, they will have cognitive dissonance. For example, if they think they themselves are honest, and they have done something that are not honest. For example, they lied to somebody. They have lied to somebody, and they believe that they are honest. So apparently, this behavior that they have done and their own beliefs are not consistent, are conflicting each other. And sometimes two ideas or two thoughts are inconsistent. For example, somebody believes that he or she only helps people who are good. And another belief is that he or she finds that somebody is bad and he or she helped that person already. So you can see these two beliefs are inconsistent. So one belief is that only helping good people. The other belief is that having helped a bad person. So how to explain this? They cannot. So there is a cognitive dissonance arising from their mind. So this is called cognitive dissonance. So sometimes because of cognitive dissonance, people oftentimes change attitudes because sometimes the attitude is not consistent with some other beliefs or behaviors that they have done. So they have to change their attitude to reduce the cognitive dissonance. And the next one is the EU attitude change approach. So the researchers at EU studies why and how people change their attitudes under the speaker's persuasion. So they found two ways or two approaches or two routes to change people's attitudes or ideas. So the first way is the central route. The second way is the peripheral route. So in the central route, the speaker use logic, use data, use logical analysis to persuade audience. So when the audience is very analytical and motivated to pay attention, central route is the best way to change their attitudes. So it means that audience are very motivated, really want to watch, listen to this speech or message. And they are analytical means that they use logic to think about the stuff that the speaker talks about. So they like to use logic to really analyze the message that speaker convey to the audience. So when the audience is like this, the central route is the best way to convince people, to change people's attitudes. And when the audience is not analytical, when the audience does not really want to use logic to really think about the message, or they are not motivated to pay attention, they do not want to hear this message, they do not want to engage in this. When the audience is like this, the peripheral route is the best way to change their attitudes. So in the peripheral route, they use some other information to persuade the audience, such as very long message, or claiming that the experts have this kind of ideas, or make the audience to be very happy so that audience wants to believe this, or they threaten the audience and saying something, if you do not do this, you will be like this, something like that. So this kind of methods are peripheral. It's not essential to the message. The central part of the message is the logic of the message, the message itself. However, in the peripheral routes, they use some other cues, other information to imply that, oh, this message must be very right, must be very correct. So this is central route and peripheral route of persuasion. Let's look at another concept, conformity. So conformity is a form of social influence. A person's judgment is influenced by the majority in a social group. So there are a group of people, majority of the group have a certain judgments, and that person's judgment is influenced by most of the people in the group. This is a conformity. Another one is, so actually another one is obedience. Yeah, obedience is the change of a person's behavior to comply with a demand by a authority figure. So a authority figure in that social situation asks this person to behave in certain ways or to do something, and the person's comply with that authority figure. This kind of social influence is called obedience. So the person does something as that authority figure asks that person to do. This is obedience. And the next concept, prejudice. So prejudice is a form of attitude. So it's a feeling. It's a negative attitude. It's a feeling toward an individual based solely on that person's membership in the social group. So that is prejudice. Stereotype is a belief. It's a negative belief about an individual solely based on their that person's membership in the social group. And the discrimination, it's not covered here, but you can know discrimination is a behavior, it's an action, it's a negative action toward a individual solely based on the membership of that person in the group. Another concept is empathy. So why empathy is the capacity to understand another's perspective and feelings and opinions. So empathy is a capacity to understand other people. So other people have their own perspectives, their own motivations, intentions, knowledge, information, and feelings and emotions. So empathy is the capacity to understand these aspects of another one. And that is the reason for why we engage in prosocial behavior. So that is the reason for why we help others, because we have the empathy. Otherwise, why we help others, right? So, well, it's not the other people's difficulty is not of our business, but we still help others for no reason. Actually, there is a reason. That reason is empathy. And another concept that we need to know is the three elements that make people to be friends, or three elements that influence some people to become friends. So who will become friends? Those who are really close to each other. So that is the principle of proximity. Proximity means closeness. So those who are really physically close to each other, they oftentimes become friends because they can see each other oftentimes. They have more chances to talk, to communicate. Another principle is similarity. So those who are very similar oftentimes become friends. So in terms of education background, family background, in terms of their occupation or career, their attitudes or their hobbies, their interests, their lifestyles, and so forth. So in these aspects, they are similar, so they are more likely to become friends because they have more common language to talk about, right? And the third principle is reciprocation. So means that those people who help each other will become friends. So they interchange the benefits, or they help each other. So they are more likely to become friends because they get to know each other when they in the process of helping each other. And also in this chapter, we need to know the some important experiments. So we need to know the procedures and implication of some experiments. There are 3 of the experiments. You do not have to know the details, every detail of these experiments, but you know the basic facts, basic notion of this of these 3 studies. The first one is a Stanford prison experiment. So in the Stanford prison experiments, you know what happened, and some participants become the guards in the prison. Some participants become prisoners, and as the experiment goes on, things happen, and the guards of the prison behave more and more extreme. And because of the social rules, they are not that kind of people, but however, they think that they should play as the guards of the prison. So the social rules make them to behave more and more extreme. And another experiment is the Ash line experiment. That shows the power of conformity. So in that experiment, there are a lot of people sitting in one row. Only one person is the real person. All other people are the actors. And the experimenter gives a very, very simple task. Just compare the length of some lines. So that's why it's called a line experiment. All other people except the real participants gave the wrong answer, gave the wrong judgment. And they try to observe how the real participants respond. Oftentimes, the real participants conform to the majority of the group. They gave the wrong answer because they want to be consistent with other people's judgments. And another experiment is the Milgram's obedience experiment. That's the experiment done by the psychologist Milgram. So we have watched this video. So the basic procedure is that they recruit the participants, and there is another actor who acts as a participant. It's not a real one, but it acts as a participant. The real participant is always chosen as the teacher in the experiment, and the other actor is always chosen as a learner, and they are put in different rooms. And the real participant is asked to give the electric shocks to the learner when the learner gives the wrong answer. The experimenters claim to the real participants that, oh, this is an experiment for learning. Want to test how fast or how effective the learner can learn something. But actually, it's an experiment that wants to see the reactions of the participants when the authority figure, when the experiment ask the participants to go on this experiment, even after giving the electric shocks to the learner. So what they want to see, the real purpose of this experiment is that they want to see to what degree the real participants can obey to the authority figure, to what degree. So this is a Milgram's obedience experiment. So just know the basic procedures of these 3 experiments and know the basic implications of these 3 experiments. This is all the stuff for social psychology. And let's go to the next chapter. Chapter 14 is about stress and happiness. So first we talk about everything about stress. So first we need to know what stress is. Stress is a process. In that process, the person perceives and responds to events that that person interprets overwhelming or threatening to that person's well-being. So it's a process in which that something happened and that person interprets that thing is very overwhelming or threatening to that person's own well-being. That process is called stress. So stressor is something cause some people to become stressful. So life events happening in life that cause people to be stressful, that is stressor. Appraisal is a cognitive process, is a thinking process. In that process, the person evaluates the significance of that events in terms of one's well-being. So in the process, the person will evaluate, how and to what degree that thing will influence my own well-being. Does that event increase my well-being or threaten my well-being or damage my well-being? So that process, thinking process, is called appraisal. And next concept is a fight or flight response. That is a biological response from our physical body when there is stress. So when the stress is formed in our mind, something happened and we think that that thing will threaten our well-being. So stress will happen in our mind. And the direct following consequence is the fight or flight response. It's very automatic. It's very quick. We cannot control that process. It just happens every time there is stress in our mind. And in that response, in that process, when we have the fight or flight response, we either choose to deal with the threat directly or fight with the stress directly, stressful events directly, or we need to run away, we need to flight. So there's our two actions because of the fight or flight response. Of course, there are a lot of biological changes in the body when there is fight or flight response. And another concept we need to know is burnout. Burnout is a result of long-term stress. When we stress for too long time, we may accumulate a state called burnout. So in burnout, people's physical resources, emotional resources, intellectual resources are exhausted. So it means that there's no physical strength, there are no good emotions, and their intellectual abilities are decreasing. So chronic fatigue, weakness, low energy, feelings of hopelessness. So these are characteristics of burnout. And next we talk about how to cope with stress, how to deal with stress. There are mainly two kinds of coping styles. The first one is problem-focused coping. It means that we've solved the problem and that stress is reduced because the stressor is gone. When the stressor is gone, there's no stress. So we solve the problem. That is problem-focused coping. And then another way is emotion-focused coping. So we can appraise that event again. We can reappraise. We can think of that event in another way. We do not have to believe that that event is threatening our life, threatening our well-being. We can reframe that event using a different idea. That is emotion-focused coping. So we do not solve the problem. We change our beliefs about that problem. That is emotion-focused coping. And also, next concept is proactive coping. Proactive coping is a one example of emotion-focused coping. So in proactive coping, we can interpret that event as something that is challenging, which means that that thing can help us grow, can help us develop some abilities and skills. So that is proactive coping. And the next part is about happiness. Happiness, what is happiness? There are different models, theoretical models to describe what happiness is. And one model is the PERMA model, P-E-R-M-A. So it tells us that there are 5 elements in happiness or in well-being. When we have these 5 elements, we must be very happy and we have high levels of well-being. P stands for positive emotion. E stands for engagement. R stands for relationships. M stands for meaning. And A stands for accomplishment. So we will not cover in detail here about the 5 elements, but we know that there are 5 elements in the PERMA model. And another thing that we need to know is that there are 3 categories of topics in positive psychology. Yeah, so there are 3 major categories to study in positive psychology. First one is positive experiences. We have a lot of experiences in our life. Every moment we are experiencing the life. So in positive psychology, we study those good and positive experiences, such as positive emotions, gratitude, love, well-being. So these are the positive experiences. And also second category is that we study some stable patterns, stable characteristics are positive, that are positive. Those are positive traits, such as those character strength, such as wisdom, courage, humility, love for learning something else, interpersonal skills. And the third category is about positive institutions. So those are the places or organizations that are positive for the people who are in those organizations or places. So positive schools and positive workplaces, those are positive institutions. So this is all the stuff about chapter 14. And we can go to next chapter. So chapter 15 and chapter 16 are lectured in the same week. So chapter 15 is about psychological disorders, the mental illness. And chapter 16 is about the treatment of those psychological disorders. So they're closely related. We just talked about these 2 chapters last week. So first we know what the psychological disorder is. So this condition characterized by abnormal thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It's very vague, but yeah, it is a definition. And there is the file or document or book for diagnosing disorders, those psychological disorders. So the name of this book you need to remember. So it is called the Diagnostic and the Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or it's called DSM-5. So this book tells us how to judge one has certain psychological disorder based on the standards provided by this book. And next, we need to know a model. It's a theoretical model, or it's a model that help us to decide the causes of psychological disorders. It's called a diathesis stress model. It tells us that both people's predispositions and also environmental factors lead to the onset of the psychological disorder. Means that people's own characteristics and the situations, the environmental factors that the people live in, they both create the psychological disorder. Not only one side, but the two sides make people to have psychological disorders. That is what the diathesis stress model tells us. And next, there are some specific disorders. We can just know the basic concepts of these disorders. So the first one is generalized anxiety disorder and social anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, and schizophrenia. So generalized anxiety disorder, it's a disorder in which the patients have too much uncontrollable and powerless anxiety or worry or apprehension. They worry too much and their anxiety is meaningless, doesn't make sense. This is a generalized anxiety disorder. And the social anxiety disorder is the extreme and persistent fear or anxiety of social situations. And also they have the avoidance behaviors. This is a social anxiety disorder. And another one, major depressive disorder. It's a mood disorder, another type of mood disorder. So the criteria or standard for diagnosing major depressive disorder is that there are two conditions must be met. First one, they're sad or depressed almost for every day, almost every time, every day. And that situation lasts for more than 14 days. And the second condition is that they do not have any interest or enjoyment in activities anymore, any longer. And that situation lasts for more than 2 weeks, more than 14 days. So if two standards are met, two criteria are met, that person can be diagnosed with the major depressive disorder. And also there are some accompanying symptoms such as weight loss, such as weight gain, such as difficulty falling asleep, such as sleeping too much, such as suicidal ideation, something like that. And the schizophrenia is a psychological disorder characterized by disturbances in thoughts, perception, emotion, and behavior. So they have the abnormal ideas, thinking, and knowledge, and emotion and behaviors. So every aspect of that person's mind is problematic. There are disturbances in every aspect of that person's mind. So there can be, the major symptoms can be hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking, abnormal behaviors or actions, negative symptoms. So next one is two kinds of therapies. So we can know there are two types of therapies that cure the psychological disorders. One type is psychotherapy. Another type is biomedical therapy. And we can know some specific therapies. So there is psychoanalysis, but it's not covered. There is behavior therapy. We just know the basic notion of behavior therapy. There's cognitive therapy. It's not covered. There is cognitive behavior therapy. It's a combination of cognitive and behavior therapy. So one example, one kind of a cognitive behavior therapy is called a rational emotive therapy, or RET. So in that therapy, the therapists try to cut the connection between the events happened before in the patient's life experiences and the beliefs about those events that patients have. Because the therapy believes that the assumption of this therapy is that the belief about some kind of events cause the problematic behaviors and emotions. So the task for the therapist is to help the patient to cut the connection between the event and the belief about that event. That's all the stuff for these two chapters. And for the previous chapters from 1 to 10, you can watch previous videos about the review for those chapters. And in the exam, there will be stuff about these 5 chapters. And also there will be questions about the first 10 chapters. So for the first 10 chapters, they have been tested in midterm 1 and 2, but in this final exam, they are also going to be tested. But there will be actually less questions. In the final exam, there will be less questions about about the stuff from chapter 1 to chapter 10. There will be a little bit more questions about the stuff from chapter 11 to chapter 16, because it's more fair, I think. Yeah, so that's all the stuff for the review for the study guide. You can find it on Canvas. And also there will be 2 writing assignments due this week. Let's look at them. When we go to Canvas and we found the module for week 17, we can see a lot of stuff. So I posted the 3 study guides in this week. Study guide for midterm 1, midterm 2, and the study guide for the rest of chapters. So all these study guides we need to review all these 3 study guides for the final exam. And also there are 2 writing assignments due this week. So the first writing assignment is the application essay 2. I believe that you have written application 1, essay 1. It's a similar format, similar stuff, but application essay 2 covers different content. So you need to pick a concept from chapter 9 to chapter 16 of the textbook, except the chapter 14. Chapter 14, I think it's chapter 13. Chapter 13 is about organizational psychology. We did not cover yet. So pick the one specific concept and write a essay. The format is exactly the same with the last writing application essay assignment. So paragraph 1 is the description of your personal experience that is related to that psychological concept. And this paragraph 2 is about description of that concept using your own language. And this paragraph 3 is about your thinking process of how to connect this concept with your own personal experience. So describe how you explain the concept that you picked, and also write in detail on how the research explains your experience. This is due at the last day of this week, and it's 20 points. And the next writing assignment is called What You Learn essay. It's 10 points. There'll be less points. It's also due at the last day of this week, on Sunday. So in this essay, you will finish 2 things. First, you can write about any concept, theory, practice, or therapy that you are interested the most from this course. You can just pick one thing from this course that you learned. And that thing is what you are interested in the most. And write about that thing. And the second task is writing about how you apply this concept, theory, practice, or therapy to improve your life or broaden your horizon. You can write about how this thing can improve my own life, how I use this thing to improve my life, or how this learning about this theory or concept or practice can help myself to have more knowledge, to have more understandings of humans or life. And this essay you can write about 1 page. About 1 page, double space 1 page. That's it. And just have a like writing. You can just write about what you are interested the most. And that is the purpose of this writing assignment. Okay, so this is all the stuff for this week. There will be no lectures, just a review for the final exam, just writing the 2 writing assignments. So why these 2 assignments are due this week? Because I hope you to focus on the final exam next week. So final exam is very important. So this is all the stuff for this week. So I guess that the next week we will not have videos. So this is probably the last time you can see me, you can hear me talking. And good luck with the final exam and everything. Good luck with your life. And bye-bye.